this figure and this figure are not in the same scale. And that's okay. But sometimes maybe it could work, and sometimes maybe it really shouldn't matter. Collectors, let's talk about size scaling. So figure sizes are something of a weird thing for collectors. Some are very strict on what they collect, and some folks, like me, are kind of all over the place. If you look at my collection, I have figures in all scales. Scale of the figures doesn't really mean too much for me. Now, I've never really been into like the 1/18 scale, which basically what this Gypsy Danger is in that 1/18 scale. This Haya Godzilla is, you could fudge it into the 1/12 scale, but it's mostly a 1/10 scale. And by scale, and now this is where some folks get very, very technical. This is like a 7-inch figure, and if you want to just call it that, that's fine. Because scaling would mean, technically, what you scale the figure to the size of what the actual thing is. So obviously, when you say that, obviously we don't mean this is 1/10 the size of Godzilla. It just means that this is like in that 7-inch scale. Or 1/12, but 1/12 is sort of a weird thing, and not really that. You know what I'm saying? A 1/12 figure would be more like this Spider-Man figure from SH Figure Arts here. That's a 1/12 scale figure. There's bigger figures as well. There's the 1/6 scale figures, which are, about 30 centimeter, 12 inch in size. So, you got various scales, and then you got even bigger, like 18-inch figures, and, so on and so forth. And you could call them, different size scales, but I think a lot of collectors really get caught up on this. They want everything to be the same, in the same height scale, and not necessarily, like, scaling to the movie. Now, this has come up, a lot lately. And, a lot of it is due to what McFarlane has done with the Pacific Rim line, with their license for the Pacific Rim line. They decided to go in, a small figure scale, with accessories and, various things, and comics, and market it more for kids. Now, little figures don't necessarily need to be just for kids. Haya Toys does this 1/18 scale line, and that's how they made their bread and butter. It wasn't on the Godzilla line that got them popular. It is on the 1/18 scale figures. And here's a RoboCop. I have another one here, actually. Here is a Predator. You've seen me do tons of reviews of these in the past, not in the future. But, this is proper 1/18 scale. I was never the biggest guy on this. I'm, like I said, more of a 1/12 scale figure. But this is like the standard thing. So, McFarlane decided to make smaller figures, a little less articulation, but, more playability, more things to play with in their sets. Again, strictly marketed towards kids. But obviously, collectors are going to want to collect, like myself. I didn't buy these for Ultrazilla Jr. I bought them for me. I'm a huge Pacific Rim fan, and I wanted these figures. There's something to be said about supporting lines you like, and wanting them to do more. I did my part, bought a whole set of these, not only because I wanted them for the collection and I wanted to review them, but I want McFarlane to be like, oh, there's a, platform for more Pacific Rim stuff. Maybe we will do a bigger figure line. Now they do stuff in that 7-inch scale. And, it's quite possible that we get figures from them in a bigger size. Now they also have a mega size, and maybe we'll get stuff in that instead. I think that would be kind of cool. But for now we got these little guys, and I think they're cool and they work. Not everything has to be in the same scale, and that's one of the things I'm trying to say. Now, I had some folks, talking to me about wanting to see this scale. I don't think that works, at all, in my opinion. This to me works better with like a SH Monster Arts. Now, this is one of the smaller SH Monster Arts, but I like that. I could see Godzilla being a lot bigger than a Jaeger, but not this much bigger. And one of the things I've been saying in the reviews is, regardless of what their heights are in their current movies, if they ever made a movie of Godzilla vs. Pacific Rim, they'd size up all the Jaegers to meet up with Godzilla. Why? Because just like collectors are can be very particular about having everything the same size, companies understand that, and marketing companies definitely understand that, and they drive what they want, these studios to make. So, they know toys that are going to be all the same size, and, kids can play with them, folks can do better photography with them, smashing up against each other, or whatever, is going to work a lot better, and it's going to sell more units. And at the end of the day, you want to be able to sell more units, right? So for me, this does not work, even though some folks were like, oh, this is, how big they are and how, I'd want to do the photography. That, to me, I don't even think that makes for really great photography, because, not everybody knows that, and it just looks a little weird in my opinion. I don't know. That's how I feel. It doesn't look quite right, the scaling there. But, these are cool figures regardless. They came up with some really great kaiju, and I think they're worth, buying for your collections. They're very, very cool, honestly. But scaling is such a weird thing, and people really get caught up on it, and, they've been disparaging this line in particular because they're small figures, and, they do less articulation and whatever, and articulation is not the be-all, end-all of everything. It really, really isn't. That's a whole other thing onto itself, but, it's strange that folks get caught up on that. You'd think you just want to have really great figures in your collection. Instead, there's so many figures out there, but no, folks really get caught up in this. Like this drives people bananas. Here you have 4 different lines and 4 different scales of figures of Godzillas. You got, SH Monster Arts and NECA and Haya and Super 7. And obviously, people go crazy about this stuff, and sometimes that lends to part of their hate. And going back to our bigger Let's Talk discussion video, about a lot of hate in the community, but that this lends to it, like, I can't buy this because it's too big, it doesn't scale with anything else. How am I supposed to play with it and put it on my shelf? But you know what? You can put anything on your shelf. You can make anything work on your shelf. It's cool to have different sizes on your shelf even. I do. It's quite fun to be able to, have multi-layers of figures. Variety is the serious spice of life, guys. Don't get caught up on this stuff. There's a whole world of figures, and people get caught up and end up limiting themselves because of scale. For me personally, it's fun to have all these sizes and to be able to check out all these different things and not limit myself. There's so many cool figures that I'd probably miss if I only collected, say, this size figure, which is a great size. Probably my favorite size, to be honest, but that doesn't mean I need everything to be in that size. I think also at a certain period you understand what you are as a collector. I don't sit around and play with my toys. I'm not damning anybody for playing with their toys. all the more power to you. Have fun with your toys, however you do. Some people are figure photographers more than anything, and that's fantastic. And something where like this little figure with the bigger figures works for them. But there's other photographers that would love to show them, the figures on the same level. So, there's good and bad about it, and there's not really good and bad about it. There's really no right or wrong about it, I should say. The only thing I am trying to stress is, we don't need to argue about what sizes are the best and what figures should be made by companies because to appease, our own desires, right? Like, I feel like it all goes back to, let people like what they like, let these companies make what they make, and if it's something we don't enjoy, then we don't have to get it, Don't be disappointed, though, when McFarlane makes small figures that aren't intended for collectors to begin with, all right? You could be disappointed that they didn't make bigger sizes in a size that you wanted, but, at the same time, the little figures, they have their place, and I think that's a really cool place to be, and a really cool idea for McFarlane to have done. I'm into that. I think that's fantastic, and they're cool. For me, personally, the little figures will go in front of my display when I get my Pacific Rim display going again. Hopefully soon. But, I have room, is what I'm saying. I mean, I've always collected different scales. I mean, heck, Transformers has made a decades-long career around size scales, and based their pricing on it, and everybody knows the different sizes: Deluxe, Voyager, Leader, Commander, which is fairly new, Core Class. Like, people know the size scale lines, and the names have changed a little over the years, but they made they based their whole line on their different scales, so they get the different scaling and how to do it and how to price it and put it as part of the lexicon of folks that collect. So it's something that I've always been used to, but so for me, collecting different sizes has always been right within the line itself, and to me that's the most fun. As long as my Super 7s look good together and my Hayas look good together, that's really all I need. The other thing that it goes back to some of the conversation I've had recently of folks wanting this to go with a different line or their lines going together. That's something a company can't worry about, and that's something that we shouldn't be complaining about on a regular basis, because no company is going to make figures to go with another company. That's just not what they do, They make figures to go with their own things, and, McFarlane isn't here to appease the idiosyncrasies of the collector market, they're not here, they're here to make money, and to produce a line that people are gonna get their line. Like, McFarlane wants you to get all the figures in this line. They're not looking for you to enhance your Haya Toys line, or the Super 7 line, or the SH Monstars, or whatever. That's not what they're here for. They're here to sell their toys. Super 7 is here to sell you on their toys. Haya is there to sell you on their toys. That's what it's about. They need to make sure their figures go together and look together well. Right here, you have 3 different styles of figures, and look, there's 2 of each. Look how good they go with the figure they're supposed to go with. Whether you like the figures or not is a different conversation, but that's what they make figures for. That's what they size their figures for. And that's really, honestly, guys, the most important thing about, you know, different scales and figures. Like, remember that one company did not make figures to scale with your figures from another company. If you can't deal with that, that's not on them. That's not something you should be putting on them and complaining about. You know, like, deal with it. Deal with it yourself. Figure yourself out. But most importantly, let it go, because you're gonna have a lot better time collecting if you don't worry about this stuff. You know, if you're a toy photographer, you know, have different sections of your, you know, collection where you keep different sizes. This way you could easily grab them and, you know, shoot them. I mean, that goes with anybody collecting, right? You can't stand a figure shelf that has all different sizes of figures like the ones I showed you earlier. Don't do it like that. Make one shelf, one full size, 1/18. Another shelf, 1/12. Another shelf, 1/6. You know, if that's going to be an issue, make it like that. But I feel like, don't limit yourself. But you can. I'm not saying you can't limit yourself. If all you want to collect is a one-size figure, that's totally cool. But go look for those figures. Don't come to another figure line and go, I hate these figures because they're not the size I want them. That doesn't do anything for anybody, you know? Like, I mean, look, don't get them. And there you go. You made your statement by not buying something that you didn't want. There's nothing more valuable, you know? Sometimes shouting into the ether just does nothing than cause unnecessary arguments and fights. And that's, my friends, is probably what a lot of this Let's Talk series is about. And this was really no argument. There was a little bit of an argument, I think, with, you know, the Pacific Rim stuff being so small, and I do get a lot of folks hating on them, but I think they have their place. And now that I've done all the individual figures, I think it's a really cool line. I think more folks should get it, you know, regardless of the size scale. And there you go, guys. I'll leave it at that. Let me know your thoughts down below on any of this stuff. And if you're new to the channel, why don't you go ahead and sub yourself for daily content, and let me help you diversify your collection. Till next time, peace out, peeps.